Morning, girls. Hope everybody is safe at home. So, during this lockdown break, let us revise some concepts of our subject software engineering. So, first, let us start with what are the contents that we discussed during these revision classes. Okay, so from the first unit, let us revise software and software engineering and various process models. And from second unit, let us revise requirements gathering and analysis, cohesion and coupling, and layered arrangement of modules. From the third unit, developing the DFT model of a system, transformation of a DFT into structure chart, and user interface design. And from fourth unit, coding, code review, software documentation, testing. So here we will be revising all the testing strategies. Okay. And from fifth unit, software reliability, statistical testing, software quality management system, SCI CMM model, and CASE, that is computer aided software engineering. And from the last unit, let us revise maintenance process models, software configuration management, and finally reuse. Okay. Now let us start with our first topic, that is software and software engineering. So first let us revise what do you mean by a software. So generally everybody feels that a software is nothing but a collection of programs. But that definition is not enough to define any kind of software. We need a little bit more. We need to define it more accurately. Okay, so here a software is nothing but it's not only a collection of programs, rather it should also contain some data structures and some kind of descriptive information in the form of documents. Okay, so finally we can define our software as a collection of instructions, data structures, and descriptive information. Now, what are these instructions? These instructions are again nothing but our computer programs which, when executed, produce some output, and it should fulfill the user's requirements, and it should work with a good performance. Okay, and these instructions also require certain kind of data structures. Why data structures means, so in order to execute any kind of instruction, sometimes we require the input data and we need to perform some manipulations on that data. Okay, so in order to perform some manipulations or some kind of processing on the data, we require certain kind of data structures. So these data structures are also required. Next, coming to the descriptive information in both hard copy and visual forms. That means we require some set of information in the hard copy format and in the soft copy format. So it can be either a source code or it can be any user manual. So without user manual, even though you are having a software, a novice user will be unable to use it. So this kind of descriptive information or this kind of documentation is also important in order to use the software. So finally, we can define the software as a collection of instructions, data structures, and descriptive information. Next, now let us see what is the definition given for software by IEEE. Okay, according to IEEE, the software is a collection of computer programs together with data, procedure, rules, and associated documentation which operate in a specified environment with certain constraints to provide desired outcomes. See, in this definition also we came across the computer programs, data, and documentation. So other than that, this computer programs, data, and documentation, the definition also included procedure and rules. That means whenever you want to develop any kind of software, you need to follow certain procedures. Procedure in the sense how that software has to be developed. Okay, you need to follow certain kind of procedure. And whenever you are doing any kind of task, for example, let us consider you are writing some lines of code. So obviously you will be selecting some programming language, and in that programming language you will be writing the programs. Okay, so now while writing the programs you will be following some syntactical rules, right? So if you are not following these syntactical rules, are you able to produce the output? Are you able to produce the desired output? No. So whenever you write a program, it's definitely it's mandatory to follow the syntactical rules. So that means whenever during the entire development of the software, you need to follow certain kind of rules. It's not only while writing the program, but it may be during design part, or it may be during a testing part, or in any kind of activity you need to follow certain kind of rules. So finally, where this software will run, it will run in some specified environment. Okay, so without any specified environment, we can't run our software. The software requires certain kind of operating system, or it may even require a hardware, and it may even require some dependent softwares. Okay, so in order to run any software, we require certain kind of environment, and it may run under certain constraints or conditions in order to produce the desired outcome is nothing but our final product or our final output. Okay, so altogether we can say the software is a collection of computer programs together with data, procedure, rules, and associated documentation, which operate in specified environment with certain constraints to provide the desired outcomes. Okay, next comes the characteristics of a software. Is this software a physical component? No. Software is not a physical component. Rather, it is a logical component. We can't touch that software. So, this software will have different characteristics when compared to any hardware component. Okay, so coming to the first characteristics of the software, that is, the software is developed or engineered. It is not manufactured in a classical sense. That means just like any hardware component, we can't say the software is manufactured. Manufacturing in the sense you are producing something which is already developed one, or which is already produced one. The same thing you are doing it again and again. But whenever you are developing any kind of software, are you developing the existing software again? No. You are trying to include some extra features to the existing software, and you are producing the new software. So that means the software is not manufactured. Okay, rather it is developed or engineered. Okay, next characteristics is software doesn't wear out. So this is the most important characteristic of the software. So since it is not any physical entity, it doesn't wear out or die. Okay, rather it becomes obsolete in the sense outdated. Why? Because this software doesn't have any death, just like a human being or just like any hardware component. It won't run out or it will not die. Okay, so rather it becomes outdated. Okay, next, reusability of components. Okay, whenever we are trying to work on any new project, that is whenever we are trying to develop any kind of software, first we start from the scratch and design every unit of the software product. So that means from the existing software product, we are developing a new software component. So here, are we reusing the existing software component? Yes. That means the software is a reusable one. Okay, reusable one, that is reusability of components. The next one is software is flexible in the sense we can perform any kind of modifications. That means any kind of changes can be accommodated in the software. We can change the code. If you consider a program, we can change the code of the program, we can add a new code, we can delete the existing one. Okay, we can perform any kind of modifications in the code. So that means it is flexible one. So finally we can say the software is flexible. But this flexibility nature is having both advantages and disadvantages. Coming to the advantages, since the software is flexible, we can accommodate any kind of changes. That is, we can perform any kind of updates. We can produce a newer versions of the software. Okay, so this is the major advantage of this feature. Coming to the drawback, so since the software is flexible, since we are able to modify it in any sense, sometimes our software may lead to the software crisis. That means we one day we will be unable to monitor or control that kind of software. So once more number of modifications has been done, it may lose its main purpose of development. Okay, so that is the drawback of this flexibility characteristic. Coming to the next one, that is software has logical properties rather than physical. Yes, the software is intangible. That means the software cannot be touched. We can't touch the software just like other property, just like other components. Okay, so that means it doesn't have any physical properties. Rather, it is having a logical properties. Okay, what are those logical properties? That means in spite of having no physical properties, the software product can be measured. How it can be measured? We are having some size metrics. So we can get the size of the software in terms of lines of code. And next one is estimated. The software can be estimated. We can estimate its cost. We can estimate its time. We can estimate its budget. We can estimate its performance in the form of reliability and usability. Okay, so these can be calculated. Okay, in spite of having no physical properties, the software product can be measured, estimated, and can be calculated. Okay, coming to the next characteristic, that is the software has a certain operating environment, end user, and customer. So obviously, yes, the software requires some operating environment. Without any operating environment, we can't even you run our software. Why? Because without providing anything, if we are having a new software, where we can run it, how we can use it. Okay, so we require certain operating environment. In this operating environment, we may have either a hardware components and we may even have a software components. For example, you require a CPU, you require an operating system. Okay, so without these, can you run our software? Without having any other device, can you run our software? No. So that means the software, in order to use a software, we require certain operating environment. Now, we are having a software, we are having some operating environment, then who will be using it? It may be our end user or customer. Okay, so the software is having a operating environment, end user, and customer. Okay, so these are the characteristics of the software. Next, coming to the legacy software. Okay, it's nothing but a software itself. Legacy software is nothing but an old software which is developed over decades ago, and still we are using that software by performing some modifications in it. Okay, so that kind of software is nothing but a legacy software, and this will be used in business requirements or in any computing platforms. Okay, so in simple terms, we can say a legacy software is nothing but an old software which is still being used by some users by performing some modifications in it. Okay, next coming to the unique nature of web apps. Web apps means web applications. Okay, so previously web apps are a web app is nothing but a set of linked hypertext files that presented information using text and limited graphics. Okay, but now in web applications, we are not only having a text, we not only having the graphics, we are able to transfer the information, we are able to use audio files, we are able to use video files, we are having a different kinds of graphics. Okay, so now the web apps have been well developed. Now let us see what are the attributes of those web apps. So these are the attributes. Okay, first one is network intensiveness. Network intensiveness in the sense, a web app resides on a network and it has to serve the needs of various clients. Okay, so generally we run any kind of web application over a network, and this network will serve the needs of various clients, and this network may be available for in the form of an internet, or it may provide a limited access and communication in the form of a corporate intranet. That is, it may be either in the form of an internet or it may be in the form of a corporate intranet. That is network intensiveness. Next comes concurrency. A large number of users may access the web apps at one time. That means this web application can be concurrently used by different kinds of users. That leads to the same concurrency attribute leads to the next attribute, that is unpredictable load. Unpredictable load in the sense the web app is used by number of users, and we can't predict how many number of users are using these web apps at a given point of time. Why? Because it may vary. For example, if you consider on Monday some 20,000 people are using that particular web app, and if you consider some other day like Saturday, so 1 lakh people may be using that web application. So that means over the web application there is an unpredictable load. Next, coming to the performance. So if a web app user must wait too long, then obviously he will not use that web application. That means that web app should not take more time for accessing, or it should not take more time for server side processing or client side formatting. If at all it is making the user to wait too long, then obviously that particular user will move or will never use that kind of web application. He will search for the another web application. So always the performance of the web application must be accurate. That is, it has to meet the customer needs. Okay, it should not make the user to wait too long. Okay, next comes availability. So this is the main attribute of the web application. So every user will feel that a particular web application should be available 24 by 7 by 365 days. That is, at each and every minute the web application should be available. Okay, if at all any web application is not available at a certain moment of time, then the user will feel that web application is not working properly, and obviously he will shift to the another application. Okay, so always the web application should be in a available mode. Okay, next one is data driven. The primary function of many web apps is to use hypermedia to present text, graphics, audio and video content to the end user. Okay, next is content sensitive. The quality and aesthetic nature of content remains an important determinant of the quality of web app. So that means in order to maintain a good quality, or in order to maintain an aesthetic nature, aesthetic in the sense the aesthetic nature in the sense it has the feel by seeing that web app should be good. That is, its a visibility or the way it appears should be good. Okay, so the quality and the way that particular web app appears to us should be good. And when it will be good in the sense, whenever it provides only relevant information, it should not provide any irrelevant information. Okay, so then we can say it is content sensitive. Okay, next comes continuous evolution. If suppose you are using some web application, so let us consider like 2 months back you had installed some application and you are using it, and still with the same features that application is running. Meanwhile, a new application is developed with advanced features. Then what you do? Obviously, you shift to the newer application. That means your old application has not been updated. Okay, so obviously the user will shift to the another application if there is no continuous development or continuous updates in the web application. That's what continuous evolution. The web application should evolve continuously, or else it will lose its customers or users. And next one is immediacy. So immediacy in the sense the needs to get the software to market quickly. That means whenever any update has been done in that web application, it should be immediately available to the customer. Okay, you should not hide the updates from the customer, or else you'll be losing the customers. That's what immediacy is. Next, coming to the security. So obviously we are using the web applications in the sense that we are using the network. That means we can access these web applications only via network. Okay, so it is difficult if not impossible, to limit the population of end users who may access this application. So we can't limit the number of users to use this application. So obviously more number of users will be using it. So since a large number of people are using the web application, it's their responsibility to provide a security to their sensitive content that they are residing or that they are storing in that web application. For example, some applications may require our mobile number, they may require our details to be uploaded. Okay, if these details are available to other third party, and if they are misusing it, then is there a security in that web application? No, obviously no. Okay, so all web applications must provide a security. Okay, so this security is provided whenever a data transmission takes place, whenever the data transmission from the end user to the product or to the web application takes place. Okay, so obviously the security plays the main role. And coming to the last one, that is aesthetics. So already I said you, aesthetics means the way that the web app appears to us, that is the look and feel we have while seeing that web application. Suppose a web application has been developed, it is meeting many requirements of us, it is really providing good features, but if its appearance, that is the way how we see it, or how its design is done, is not good, then do we use it? Obviously no. So how importance we give for the features of any application, the equal importance has to be given to its user interface also. User interface in the sense, the way how we are interacting with the application, the way how it has to appear, it should be good. Okay, that's what aesthetic is. So these are the these are the attributes of the web applications. Next, coming to the software engineering. So we had already seen the definition of software. Now let us see what is this software engineering is, which is our main subject. Okay, so there are many definitions for defining software engineering. So let us revise the 4 definitions of software engineering. Okay, so as all we know that software engineering is nothing but a collection of good program development practices and techniques. It is by following certain procedures, by following certain principles, by following certain techniques, we try to develop a software product. Okay, so that whatever the procedure or whatever the rules we follow while developing the software is nothing but the software engineering. Okay, so this is one of the basic definition of software engineering. Coming to the second definition, that is described by Fritz Buer. So according to him, a software engineering is the establishment and use of sound engineering principles in order to obtain economically software that is reliable and works efficiently on real machines. So here the definition is not stopped up to usage of engineering principles. Rather, he is discussing about to develop a economically software that is reliable and it has to work efficiently on real machines. Okay, so whatever the engineering principles or whatever the procedures we are following, these procedures should lead to the software that is reliable and that has to work efficiently on any kind of machine. Okay, so that is our second definition. Coming to the third definition, software engineering is an engineering, technological and managerial discipline that provides a systematic approach to the development, operation and maintenance of software. So here one more step is added to the definition of software engineering. That's what maintenance is. So the last 2 definitions had concentrated only on the development of a software product in a reliable manner. So once the software is developed and deployed to the customer, then the maintenance of that software begins. Okay, so this definition has included the last activity also, that is a maintenance. So a software engineering is an engineering, technological and managerial discipline. It provides a systematic approach not only to the development of the software, not only to the operation, that is the way we use it, okay, not only to the development and the way we use it, but we require some systematic approach to maintain that software also, okay. So that's what the third definition is. And coming to the last definition, which is defined by IEEE. So according to IEEE, IEEE defines software engineering as a systematic approach to the development, operation, maintenance and retirement of the software. So here one more step is added in the definition of software engineering, that is retirement of a software. Again, what is this retirement? The software, we already we had seen in the characteristics of the software that the software never dies, rather it become obsolete in the sense outdated. So whenever a software is outdated, then the software is retired, we can say the software is retired, okay. So in this definition, that retirement of the software is also included, okay. So the systematic approach to the development, operation, maintenance and retirement of software, okay. So this is the last definition we had got for software engineering. We are concentrating on operation, maintenance and retirement of the software, okay. The software engineering is a systematic approach to the development, operation, maintenance and retirement of software. And why we require this software engineering? That's what the major goal of this software engineering is to understand the customer needs and develop the software with improved quality, on time and within the budget, okay. So this is the main reason why we use the software engineering. So we use the software engineering in order to understand the customer needs, in order to develop the software according to the customer needs, and that software should include a good quality, and that software should be developed within a time and within a budget, okay. So that's what the main goal of the software engineering. Next, software process, okay. So in order to develop a software, we are using software engineering, that is we are following certain kind of systematic approach, okay. So using this approach, we perform a set of activities. So that set of activities can together called as software process. So that means a software process is a set of ordered activities carried out to produce a software product. It specifies the way to produce software. Okay, what do you mean by a software process? It's nothing but a set of ordered activities which are done in order to produce a software product. Now again, what is this activity? So an activity is nothing but it contains some set of actions, okay. The collection of actions together can be termed as an activity. For example, the main aim of performing any activity is to achieve a broad objective, okay. So whenever you are performing anything, whenever you are doing anything in order to meet a broader objective, then that can be considered as an activity. And in order to perform that activity, you will be performing some set of actions, okay. Now let us see what do you mean by an action, okay. So an action encompasses a set of tasks that produce a major work product. So what is this work product? So whenever you are developing a software, many kinds of products, different products are being generated at the end of each and every phase. That can be considered as a work product, okay. So once you had completed one activity, some kind of product is developed. That product is called as a work product. And whatever the product that is developed at the last activity, that is at the last phase of the development of the software, that is considered as a final product, and that is nothing but our software product, okay. So here comes the work product. Work product is nothing but you are performing some activity and you had got some outcome, that is called as a work product. For example, you are designing something. So after designing, you got some design, some model, Okay, so that is the work product of your design activity. Okay, that, so whatever the designing you are doing now, that can be considered as an action. Okay, and in order to perform this action, we need to perform some set of tasks. What is this task again? A task focuses on small but well defined objective that produces a tangible outcome. Tangible outcome. So here the task doesn't produce a complete outcome. Okay, so but the collection of tasks will produce a work product. So that's what an action is. Okay, for example, whenever you are testing, that is once you had completed the coding part, then you go with the testing. So during testing, we are having different kinds of testing strategies like unit testing, integration testing, and so on. Okay, so now you had completed your unit testing. Okay, that means you had completed a part of testing. So you can consider this unit testing as a task. If you had completed unit testing on all the programs and integration testing on all the programs, then you can say the testing activity has been completed. Okay, so that's what the difference between a activity, action, and task. What is an activity? Activity is a collection of actions, and action is a collection of tasks. A task focuses on a small but well defined objective. Okay, next comes to the process framework. Okay, we had identified, okay, we require in order to produce any kind of software, we require we need to perform certain activities in the sense, again, set of actions, some set of tasks are to be accomplished. Okay, so in order to develop any kind of software product. Okay, now a generic process framework has been developed in order to identify what are the activities that can be performed in any kind of software project regardless of its size or complexity. Okay, see, so this process framework is nothing but it will identify what are the set of activities that are performed on that are performed to produce any kind of software regardless of its size and complexity. So that means what are the common activities that can be performed in order to produce any kind of software. That's nothing but the process framework. Okay, now let us see what are those commonly performed activities for producing any kind of software. So those activities can be considered as a generic framework activities. Okay, generally we'll be having 5 generic framework activities. The first one is a communication, next one is a planning, next one is a modeling, next comes a construction, next and finally it comes deployment. Okay, so coming to the first generic activity, that is communication. Communication means what? Communicating with someone, that is talking to someone. So during this activity, the software developers will communicate with the customers or other stakeholders in order to know what are their requirements. So that means during communication, the requirements gathering takes place. Okay, so here we get the requirements from the customers. So once we finish the communication, then we go for the planning. Planning in the sense, this activity establish a plan for software engineering work that follows. That means how the set of activities are to be done, what would be the order of those activities to be done. Okay, so that planning is done during this planning activity. Other than this, we try to analyze what kind of risk may occur, what kind of resources we require, what kind of work products are produced, and what would be the schedule, what could be the budget, what could be the time. So everything is estimated in planning itself. Okay, so during planning, we plan for software engineering work, and we also try to analyze what kind of risks that may occur and what are the resources required, what are the other work products we should develop, what could be the schedule, what could be the budget required, what could be the time required, and even the effort required. Okay, so all this is done in the planning. So once we identify all these planning activities, then we go to the next activity, that is modeling. So during modeling, we create certain models which allow the developer and the customer to better understand the software requirements. Okay, so if we can say a picture speaks 100 words, 100 words when compared to a text. That means just by seeing the design or just by seeing some diagrammatical representation, we can understand more than by reading a paragraph, the lines of more many lines of paragraph. Okay, so that's what the advantage of any diagram is. So that's what we are doing in the modeling. Okay, so in modeling, whatever the requirements we had gathered from the customer, we are trying to represent those requirements in the form of diagrams. Okay, now what is the main reason for developing these diagrams is, first thing is the developers will easily understand what they are going to develop, and that at the same time they show these designs to the customers. Now the customer can better understand what are his requirements. If at all he find any requirement is missing, if at all he find any other requirement is to be added, if at all he feel that any requirement is not necessary, then he can provide his feedback during modeling activity itself. Okay, that's what the advantage of developing the designs during modeling activity. Okay, so once this design is completed, then we go for the next activity, that is construction. Yes, in the construction we go for coding and testing. That means we select some programming language. Okay, then we try to implement our requirements. That's nothing but we write some set of programs. So once we finish writing programs, then we test each and every program. Why we require testing? The first thing is in order to identify the errors in the code, and we can also check whether that code is according to the customer requirements or not. That means whether it is providing a proper output or not. Okay, that is the main reason for performing testing. Okay, so that means in during construction we are doing some coding part, we are doing some code generation and testing. Okay, so once the code is generated and tested, that is once the testing is successful, then our product is ready for deployment. That is our last activity, that is deployment. So here the software is ready for delivery to the customer. Now the customer will use that software product, and finally he provides some feedback on that product. Okay, so with this the framework activities completes, that is communication, planning, modeling, construction, deployment. Okay, so other than these activities, we are having certain umbrella activities. We are having 8 umbrella activities which complement or which help these generic framework activities. Okay, so these umbrella activities are applied throughout the software project and help the software team manage and control progress, quality, change, and risk. Okay, so in order to manage and control progress, quality, change, and risk, these 5 framework activities need the help of umbrella activities. Okay, now what are those umbrella activities means? The first one is software project tracking and control, risk management, software quality assurance, technical reviews, measurement, software configuration management, reusability management, and work product operation and production. Okay, these are the 8 umbrella activities which help our 5 generic framework activities. Okay, so that's all about the generic framework activities. Next, coming to the process models. Okay, so as already we seen that a generic process model will contain 5 activities, that is communication, planning, modeling, construction, and deployment, and along with this we will be having set of umbrella activities. Okay, now the way these activities are executed will lead to the will lead to the different kinds of process models, like linear process model, iterative process model, evolutionary process model, and parallel process model. So before we see these representations, first let us see the diagrammatical representation of a process framework. Okay, so in a software process we are having a process framework. Okay, in the process framework we are having umbrella activities and we are having certain framework activities. See, these umbrella activities are residing back to the framework activities. That means they are providing a support to the umbrella activity. They are providing support to the framework activities. Umbrella activities are providing support to the framework activities. Okay. So again, in the framework activities, we are having n number of framework activities. This is framework activity 1. The same way we may have framework activity 2, framework activity 3, and so on, framework activity n. In each and every activity, we are having actions. Software engineering action 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, and so on up to 1.k. Okay, and again in action we are having some tasks, some set of tasks. Okay, the same thing is represented for each and every action. So first we are having some set of tasks. Okay, all these set of tasks are forming an action, and all the collection of actions are forming a framework. Okay, so in this manner we can represent a software process. Okay, now let us move to the various process models. Okay, depending on the way we execute the framework activities, we can classify the process models into 4 categories. The first one is linear process model, next one is iterative process model, and the next one is evolutionary, and the last one is parallel process model. So coming to the linear process model, in the linear process model, all the activities are executed in a sequential manner. So that means only once we complete with one activity, then only we move to the another activity. So that means once we completed the communication, then only we move to the planning. Okay, and once the planning is done, then we go to the modeling. Once the modeling is completed, then we go to the construction. Once the construction is completed, then we go for the deployment. That means a linear process flow starts with communication and ends with deployment. Next, iterative process flow. So the name itself suggests iterative in the sense repeating something. Okay, so that means here some set of activities will be repeatedly executed. For example, let us consider you had completed your communication, you had completed the planning, you had completed a modeling, you had completed the construction. Okay, so that means you had completed your coding part and testing part. So during testing, you found that some of the customer requirement is not properly mentioned, or it has not met the customer requirement. Then what you do, again you go back to the communication activity. That means you move to the customer, and again you take suggestions from him. Again you start with communication, planning, modeling, and construction. That means you try here, a set of activities will be executed repeatedly, and which activities? Preceding activities. Okay, so iterative process flow repeats one or more activities before proceeding to the next activity. That is iterative process flow. Next comes evolutionary process flow. In evolutionary process flow, the set of activities will be executed in a circular manner. So that means once you had completed a deployment, when you come to the deployment activity, so when you had deployed your product to the customer, that is now the customer is using your product. Okay, so now again, if you are trying to produce a newer version of that software, this if you are trying to add any new update to that software, again the same circle starts, again the same set of activities starts. So that means once the deployment is done, again you move to the communication, again planning, again modeling, again construction, and finally deployment. And if you are trying to produce a newer version again, then again the same set of activities repeats. So that means here at each circuit, that is for one circle, a new version of software is deployed or developed. Okay, so that's what evolutionary process flow. Coming to the last process flow, that is parallel process flow. So the name itself suggests parallel in the sense some set of activities will be executed parallelly. So for example, let us consider like modeling and construction. Okay, so in modeling what we'll be doing, we'll be designing some diagrams. Okay, we'll be generating some models. Okay, and in construction, during construction, we by seeing those design models, we write the code. Okay, now let us consider for a software product, just for the timing, let us consider we require some 10 designs. Okay, so once the designing of one model is done, that is one design is completed, if you are trying to write the code for that design, isn't it modeling and construction are now done parallelly? Yes. Okay. Without completely done with the modeling activity, you had started the construction also. So that means here you are performing a modeling and construction activity parallelly. So the main advantage of this parallel process flow is it reduces the time. Okay, that is the main advantage of parallel process flow. So here it executes one or more activities in parallel with other activities. Okay, so that's all about the categories of that is the different types of process models. So in the next session, let us discuss what are the various kinds of process models that are available to us. Okay, so that is the classification of process models. So generally, the process models are classified into three types. That is prescriptive process model, specialized process model, and the unified model. Again, in the prescriptive process model, we are having some different classifications like waterfall model, a V model, incremental model, evolutionary model. Again, in this evolutionary model, we are having two types, that is prototype model and spiral model. And next one is concurrent development model. Okay, all this comes under prescriptive. Coming to the specialized model, we are having three different process models. They are component based development model, the formal method model, and aspect oriented software development model. Okay, and finally unified processing model. Okay, so this is the classification of various process models. In the next revision session, let us discuss in brief about all these process models. Okay, thank you girls.